The following program is presented by the Metropolitan Library Service Agency.
Hello, welcome to All About Kids, a program focusing on the interests of children and young people and some of the issues affecting them. Our guest today, Dr. Rae-Ellen Kavey, is a pediatric cardiologist, active in the American Heart Association, and compiler of a brand new cookbook for children, the American Heart Association's Kids Cookbook. She'll be talking with Mary Levins, administrator of the Oakdale Pediatric and Adolescent Consultants Clinic. And we have a young food critic, Gornick, a student at Holy Spirit School in St. Paul.
Today we're going to talk about a new book that's just come out that will be available in bookstores and at the library, and it's the American Heart Association's Kid Cookbook. It's titled, All Recipes Are Made by Real Kids in Real Kitchens. The book has an interesting format, and I think we'll start out by looking at it right away. And maybe Chris could tell us a little bit about what he thought was interesting about the book.
What did you like about the book, Chris?
Well, I liked that they had some really good recipes, like, for instance, tropical fruit sherbet. That one looked really interesting and good. It was made with fruits and
A little bit of Jell-O or something? Yeah.
All the recipes in the book are designed to be heart healthy, and I would be interested in knowing what started the whole project.
Well, I think the Heart Association, as you know, is very much interested in reducing the risk of heart disease across all age groups and all nationalities. But there hasn't been an approach, a formal approach to children. And with the recommendations for cholesterol and fat intake that came out from the National Cholesterol Education Program, it seemed like a natural time to develop a cookbook that would allow children to eat healthy and grow up healthy.
Why all of a sudden are we so concerned about fat for kids?
Well, I don't think it's all of a sudden, but I think there has been more focus in the last 5 to 10 years, now that we are aware of the risk associated with high fat intake and the fact that atherosclerosis, the process that leads to heart attacks, begins in childhood. I think we have more and more evidence of that, and that means we have to begin to reduce the risk in childhood where the process begins.
Chris, do you think a lot about what you eat?
well, not that much. I kind of just go for what's good.
What really tastes good?
Yeah.
So how did we get some of these recipes in this book?
Well, the book was developed by the Heart Association staff, and basically what they were looking for was recipes that children would want to eat. As Chris is saying, it doesn't matter how healthy it is. If it doesn't taste good, no one will eat it. So they were looking for recipes that were healthy and that were easy to make, where the directions could be adjusted for children of different ages. And that's one of the features of the cookbook, is the use of different markers for different skill levels for age-appropriate recipes.
If we look again at this recipe that Chris had chosen, they show two little chef hats, which means it's a skill level 2. And I think they go from 1 to 3 chef hats, so this would be right in the middle as far as how difficult it is to make. Another interesting thing I thought, as far as the format of the book went, are these little red hands, which are a signal to parents and to kids that they need some parental help with the process.
Right.
Looks like here they're using a blender.
Right.
Something that's a little high-tech, machinery oriented, or tools.
And especially things that involve the stove. Almost always, if you're going to be heating something, they're looking to make sure that children know how to do that before they start out on their own. But many of the recipes, once a child has walked through a recipe once, could be made again on their own.
How did they pick the recipes? Did they have lots to begin with, or?
I think they looked through a lot of other children's cookbooks and regular cookbooks and tried to adapt them so that they were addressing the major food groups at the same time, and looking for ease of cooking, ease of preparation, and tastiness, and low fat.
Did kids actually make these?
Oh yeah, I mean they were tested by the staffers' families all the way through, and as we're introducing the cookbook, we're going around and having children cook. Some of the shows are actually having the kids cook on the show.
Oh,
and
that'd be fun.
Yes, exactly. In fact, we're all prepared to do that.
Great. The emphasis on children and healthy hearts, we can certainly think about the diet, but I know that there's more to it than that. And Chris and I were talking a little bit about all the activities he's involved in. I don't think he probably spends too much time in front of the television set or little electronic toys. What do you do, Chris, that keeps you busy?
Well, I do a lot of sports like hockey, baseball, soccer, just sports like that.
Is that something that is real beneficial for the kids besides
There's
working
no
on the
question
diet?
about that. Yeah, I think the major risk factors for heart disease, as you know, are hypertension, high cholesterol, and smoking. Those are the big three. But below that, sort of poor physical conditioning is next on the list. And we know that children who are more active in their growing years become more active adults. Mm-hmm. And that's the same pattern that we're looking to with cooking and changing eating habits, where it's easier to begin a good eating habit and maintain it through adult life than it is to change an adult pattern into something that's better for you. So the idea is to train children right from the beginning in healthy eating and exercise habits.
Now this book, it said it's designed for the 8 to 12-year-old group of children. That's a good age to start getting them aware?
Oh, I think any age is, and I think children, by and large, are very aware of the need to be healthy. This book is an attempt to show them how to do that in a practical way. I'm a pediatric cardiologist, and I see children from high-risk families where there is a lot of heart disease. And one of the things that the kids all say, I talk about smoking, they all say, I am never going to smoke. Children are aware of the health risks of smoking. We're trying to broaden that base a little bit, make them more aware of the healthy style of eating and the healthy exercise style.
If a parent were going to pick up this book, there's some interesting information more towards the end of the book that's a little more geared to parents about healthy lifestyles for kids. And I think one question that many of us parents, mothers, and cooks have, and label readers, tell us about saturated fat. What is it really?
Well, you know, I'm not a dietitian, and when I talk about shopping, I always say this is the hardest thing for me, because when I walk into a supermarket, I don't think % of calories from saturated fat. It just doesn't occur to me at all. But I think it's going to become easier. You know, there's a new nutrition label that's going to be on every package, and I think that's going to make it easier for all of us. A real simple way of approaching it, though, is if you buy fresh and you buy and you avoid red meat, you're already into a lower fat diet just like that if you avoid prepared foods. And many of the recipes in the book focus on fruits and vegetables and very low fat preparations for those.
Maybe it would be interesting if you could tell us really what fat does, why fat is harmful.
Right. Fat is the basic ingredient for cholesterol. So the more fat you eat, the more building blocks you're providing for the body to make cholesterol. And it's not really the cholesterol you eat as much as it's the fat you eat that causes a problem for the body. You can overload that whole system so that more and more cholesterol is made and more lipids, fats, are laid down in the walls of blood vessels. And we do have really convincing evidence now from autopsy studies of very young people that show those who have the high cholesterol levels have much more evidence of atherosclerosis, even in very young children.
That's really pretty frightening.
It is. I think it is. It's frightening, but for people like me and the Heart Association, who have been struggling to support the idea of early aggressive approach to risk reduction, it's really the basis for this kind of work.
Very interesting. The book has a section in it about shopping and actually shopping with kids, and that's always challenging in and of itself. But as an easy rule of thumb, look for the fresh products.
Yeah, I think that's really true.
And skim milk.
Yeah, skim milk, and I think it's important for parents who are listening to this not to think that they have to go to these kinds of low-fat preparations in young babies. Children up to about 2 years of age get most of their calories and most of their nutrition from what they drink. And they need fat for appropriate growth, so there's no attempt to reduce fat up till 2 years of age. And that includes milk. Most babies switch over to a milk preparation at about a year of age from either formula or breastfeeding. That's not a time to go to a low-fat milk. You stick with whole milk at that time. But after 2, that's the time to go to a skim milk. Since a lot of kids still do drink a great deal of milk, they get a lot of calories that way, and they need the low-fat preparation.
Can people overdo?
Oh, there's no question about that. I think people can get too anxious and too worried, and it can ruin a person's life to be focusing on this in the most intense way, and that's not necessary. We're really talking about a moderate, healthy lifestyle and just a healthy way of living, rather than something that's a constant concern and a worry for a family.
At your house, Chris, do you think you eat pretty healthy?
Well, I eat a lot of junk food, but then I eat some healthy because I really like fruit a lot, so I eat a lot of fruit.
That's good.
Yeah. Maybe I could share with you something I did with my own daughter. She's a teenager now, but when she was about 8, about the age that this cookbook starts, I asked her to make dinner one night a week. And we shopped for whatever she wanted to make, and the first few months I ate a lot of grilled cheese sandwiches because that was her first big success. But it has really worked out extremely well. She's very health conscious, as many teenagers are, and she's continued to cook, and in fact there are a couple of recipes in this book she thought would be really worth trying.
Great.
I think that's a good way for parents to get children involved in nutrition, is to make them active participants. That's mentioned in the shopping section too. You know, give your children a short list of particular ingredients, things that you need to buy, and let them bring that back to the cart so they get familiar with the shopping process.
Well, everybody's going to have to do it at some point in their lives.
Yes.
Might as well teach them the right way to start with.
Well, my mom's a really good cook, and when I went off to college, I didn't know how to cook anything except a few things like fudge, you know, cookies, treat foods. And I got married and I had to cook, and I really struggled. And so that's, I guess, why I'm interested in children learning how to cook as young people and really honing their skills in a healthy way right from the beginning.
Well, with this book coming out right now in early summertime, it is certainly something fun that kids can do through the summertime too. And I know my kids are teenagers, but boy, we just graze at that refrigerator door all day long. And I would suspect that there'd be a lot of parents that could think we could set the kids off with this book. They can do something creative. Yeah. And we don't necessarily have to have grilled cheese sandwiches every day for lunch, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another good feature of the book, I think, is a lot of recipes that would be very applicable for lunch, or in a lot of snack foods, things that are appealing. One of the tricks I use when I'm talking to families where there's really a problem, either with overweight or with high cholesterol levels, is stocking the refrigerator with really healthy foods, so that when children go to the fridge, and they're going to do that, they're hungry, you could have a whole range of things available for them right from the beginning.
So a lot of good choices available.
Yeah, it's really hard if you're faced with potato chips right by the spot where the celery is, you know.
It would be pretty easy to open that bag of chips, for sure.
Exactly.
Right, Chris? You're laughing. Yeah. If there was a banana next to the potato chips, would you feel a little better? Maybe you might pick the banana?
I don't like bananas.
No, that wouldn't be the fruit for you, huh?
That's one I don't like.
That's one you would not choose.
Does your mom keep a fruit bowl out so that you can take fruit whenever you want?
But we keep them in the fridge.
In the fridge, yeah.
They're close by, in other words. They are available. Yeah. Well, that's certainly, if you can make the choices easy, that would be helpful. This book has some great illustrations. If we just look again at the cover, we obviously have a group of children who are very different looking. They're cooking different things. And I was wondering how you looked at ethnic issues and cultural diversity as this book was put together.
Well, I think there was a focus on that because I think we know that risk for heart disease exists in every group. We also know that some ethnic groups do diet and nutrition a lot better than the average American family. Certainly the use of whole grains is something that's very good for health, all kinds of health. And there are several recipes that tap into that. There are also some recipes for things like pizza. Speaking of cultural diversity, I think of pizza as almost American food these days, but there's a very simple recipe for an attractive small pizza that children can make. They did try to approach all the different issues.
I noticed there's some Southwestern type cooking in here too that actually looked pretty good to me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the recipe that appealed to me most, I still haven't had a chance to make because with summer I don't really feel like baking potatoes, but it's called baked potato soup, and it looks very tasty and involves making the base of the soup with sort of a blenderized potato, but then whole baked potatoes are floated in the soup, and each person gets a baked potato with a little bit of low-fat sour cream and imitation bacon bits on it. And it really looked sort of cute and like it would be a meal in itself, and it's kind of a fun idea for a winter.
A lot of the recipes, because they're designed for children, I think also are very nice for working families.
Oh yeah.
You could put some of these things together real rapidly and have supper on the table pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think when children are cooking, they need their results right away.
So they really can't wait for a roast for a couple hours or a chicken or something.
So there's a focus on that, on making sure the recipes are something you can put together and eat in a short time frame.
How about cooking, Chris? Do you get into any cooking? We've asked you about how you eat and how you exercise.
Well, I can cook some stuff.
Can you?
Yeah.
Well, like what was maybe the last thing you made?
Probably eggs.
Eggs. I don't think there were any egg recipes in here.
No, not any real egg recipes because of the high cholesterol and actually fat content in egg yolks. But they do have several recipes using the imitation eggs, and those are a very good substitute. They actually taste, to me, I can't really tell the difference. Really? Particularly in baking, there's no reason not to use those.
So you could shave some fat off right away
well,
without
and cholesterol, yeah. Actually, egg intake in this country has fallen way down. The first food that was identified as being associated with heart disease was eggs. So many people have grown up not eating eggs as a regular food item in the diet. And that's the one area where we don't really need to make any improvement as a nation, is in cholesterol intake. Fat and saturated fat we need to reduce, but our cholesterol intake is actually considered fairly acceptable as a nation.
As a nation. How about some foods, though, that would fit into that category? We're pretty good about eggs now. What are the next kind of problem foods do you think we need to look at?
I think meat is probably the area that's still a problem. Many meats, particularly red meats, are high in fats and saturated fats, and that's an area that it's when you're in the supermarket. Working mom, when I'm shopping, that pound of hamburger is sort of so easy and so adaptable and relatively inexpensive, and there have been a lot of attempts to deal with that at the marketing level. Ground chicken, ground turkey, low-fat beef, where they've selected the leaner cuts and used ground beef for that. So I think as a nation, we're actually making real progress in this area. There's a recent report that shows that cholesterol levels in this country have fallen 13 points in the last 10 years. And that's as an average, that's no question that's significant. And that means that we're shifting the whole eating pattern of the country towards a lower fat intake and should reduce the incidence of heart disease very substantially. We know that about almost 40% of heart attacks occur in people who come from the top 25% of cholesterol levels. So if we shift everybody down, we're going to have fewer people in that higher risk category. And I think that is definitely going to make a difference over the years to come.
We have some work cut out for us, though.
Oh, I think projects like this, where we're training children right from the outset, are really an excellent way of approaching it. because the foods that you eat in childhood are often the ones that you go back to as an adult. Your pattern of eating is established very early.
Just like my mother made, right?
Exactly. and when you're shopping and cooking and thinking about food, it's often those very foods that you grew up with that are the ones that seem right. So if we can make healthier foods seem right from the beginning, I think we're on the right track.
There were a couple other things, maybe we want to just talk about some specifics that are at the end of the book. There's a very nice glossary, though I think they call it Cook's Chatter, where they really explain to kids, or to any novice cook, what some of the vocabulary means. And there's a very nice section in here about setting the table and safety in the kitchen. I certainly enjoyed as a mom that we added the section on cleaning up.
Yeah.
I don't know how often the kids will read that portion, but it certainly is.
As long as they do it, it doesn't matter whether they read it.
That's right. Just do it. That's always part of the whole story. There is a section in the back about nutrient analyses, and you see this right now in every women's magazine.
Yep.
They will list the calories and the fat and all of this. When you see this listed on a product or on a recipe, what the total fat is, what is that telling us?
Well, fat, remember you get more calories from a gram of fat than you do from any other food source. You get 9 calories per gram of fat versus 4 for protein or carbohydrates. So when you're trying to calculate the percent of calories from fat, let's just look at here, well, here's the baked potato soup that I mentioned earlier. It's a total of 202 calories, and 3 grams come from fat. So 3 grams times 9 would be 27 calories out of your total 202 come from fat. So it's about 30 over 210. It's about 30% of the calories coming from fat. So the nutrient analysis allows you to make that calculation. What I don't understand is why they don't put at the bottom here, for those of us who don't do math very well, percent of calories from fat. That's not going to be on the new label either, and that would make it easier. But that's how you do it. It's easy enough.
So that really is easy.
Yeah.
It is rather mysterious. You do kind of feel like you're a chemist sometimes when you look at some of these food labels. They are tough.
I think it's unfortunate that it seems that way, but I totally agree with you. I have that same feeling of frustration that it's made hard rather than easy. But on the flip side of that, when we educate children about this, we let them know about this whole process. We're getting them in on the inside right from the beginning, and in the same way that they're learning how to cook and how much goes into getting a meal on the table, they're also learning how to pick the best choices when they're shopping and the best recipes when they start cooking.
And this really will become part of their cooking vocabulary.
One hopes so, yes. That's what we're aiming for.
We didn't see this in our little girl cookbooks when we were growing up. Not at all.
No, I think cookbooks in general have really shifted over and provide excellent nutrient analysis routinely now. That's basically part of what you see. And as you say, every women's magazine provides this with every recipe. And so we are becoming better educated, I think, as a nation.
Just have to teach some of us older dogs some new tricks, new thoughts.
Yeah. But they go through every recipe and provide the nutrient analysis for all of them.
When we're looking at prepared foods, we are going to have to buy some fast foods in the rest of our lives. Can you give us something that would kind of be a good guideline for that?
Well, I think you can almost always tell when food is not a good choice because it's something that's fatty to look at. And most people are very aware that red meat is not a good choice. So when we're going to, say, McDonald's, the best choice is going to be one of the salads or any of the chicken things that are not broiled or fried. But when you're with your friends, I think many kids find it hard to make the healthy choice. You don't see too many 11-year-olds going in and taking the chicken salad at McDonald's.
Not with a smile on their face, anyway.
But I think it's important for people to realize that a single meal or a single choice that's very high in fat is not a disaster. We talk about 30% of calories from fat. We're talking about a week. Spreading the whole, so if you have a meal that's very high in fat, you just have to think that the next 2 or 3 meals need to be low in fat to balance that out. I think it's important for kids who are really trying to address this subject not to feel deprived and not to feel that they're out of step with their friends. but to go and enjoy when they're with their friends and make sure that they reduce their fat in the meals at home in the next few days to match up.
So I don't have to feel too bad about that donut I ate this morning, as long as I eat that non-fat yogurt for lunch and eat that fresh fruit.
And dinner and maybe breakfast tomorrow.
Well, yeah, I've got some making up to do on that one.
Yeah, well, it's true. I mean, that is the issue. When I'm talking to children who have a really serious problem, and there are kids who come from very high-risk families, I tell them that they can have one freebie a week of whatever it is they want. So if it is a Big Mac or a hot fudge sundae or whatever, that's fine. But if they have that on Sunday, then they can't have it again till the next Sunday. And kids very quickly learn to save that treat for an occasion when they're going to be with their friends. They know a party's coming up, they're going to the basketball game, and they're going to go out with their friends afterward. Smart kids who are learning how to manage their nutrition themselves very quickly adjust to this kind of system.
So Chris, what would you pick for your treat of the week if you had to be very careful?
Maybe a number 4 at McDonald's.
What's a number 4?
That's the one with McChicken sandwich, large fries, and I'd have Mellow Yellow as a drink.
Those fries, French fries.
Fries would get us there?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that all of us love French fries, and they're one of the highest fat foods that we shouldn't be picking. But as I said, once a week, that's not a problem.
Well, I think that's kind of an interesting rule of thumb to think about for everybody, that you get this little splurge and you can have some.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I think this book is a good example. There are treats in this book.
Oh,
there
yeah.
are desserts. There are fun things to eat, but they're just made in a heart-healthy way.
Right.
Well, we'll try to keep in mind one splurge a week, avoid the fats, and exercise.
Yes, exactly.
And again, there's some very good guidelines in the book, the American Heart Association Kids Cookbook.
The Healthy Kids Cookbook is something that adults and kids certainly can use to put some variety and some nutrition into their diets. Thank you, Dr. Kavey, Mary Levins, and Chris Gornick. Thanks to all of you for joining us on All About Kids. Please tune in again.
This has been a presentation of Hennepin County Library in conjunction with the Twin Cities Metropolitan Library Service Agency. We thank you for watching, and we hope you visit your public library often.